Hey guys, Desolate Magic here, and it's time to reveal my new deck that I've been working on for quite a while. Sorry, it's not the modern deck Beat Me Down. That deck is doing rather poorly in testing. I'm still going to continue to try to fix it though. In the meantime, I've got a standard deck. Now, usually I build budget standard decks, but these days anything under 100 some people would call budget. I mean, I certainly wouldn't, but I think this one floats in somewhere around 80. I think currently it might be a little bit lower or higher depending upon prices. This honestly uses some of the best cards, but I will say that the vast majority of them have gone down 2/3 or 75% in price, easily. Some of the more expensive cards can be swapped out with somewhat similar but less powerful cards, but I hate just outright downgrading a deck. If you do though, it floats in around $15 to $20, so that should be pretty doable. This deck is called White Specialists because I've been watching too much military stuff on Hulu and Netflix. So one of the lieutenants of the Special Forces is Aerial Responder. I absolutely love this card. It is Gisela Jr. Yes, I'm going to keep saying Gisela instead of Gisela because I don't know how the hell it's pronounced. Anyway, for 3 mana, you get a Flying Vigilant Lifelinker that's a 2/3. I mean, he can block, he can hit stuff, he doesn't have first strike, but he'll keep your life total going up the whole game. Next up, we've got Gearshift Ace, and you're probably seeing where I'm going with this deck. He's a 2/1 for 2, but he has first strike. The whole crewing a vehicle thing, totally irrelevant. No vehicles in the deck. The absolute most hardcore creature in the entire deck is, of course, Gisela the Broken Blade. She only costs 4, which, it's a little hard to get to, but I did put 4 of her in the deck because she's so stupidly powerful. She has the 2 most important components, lifelink and first strike. Oh, and she has flying too. She's a 4/3, so she can kill anything 4 or lower toughness without even getting touched. Her melded form is not used in this deck because there's just no way to seek it or, scry it, draw it, none of that. But I think it's powerful enough without her. Next up, for 2 mana, we've got a 1/1 first striking lifelinker, and everybody knows this card because it's so OP. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, transform Lone Rider. And of course, his flipped version is It That Rides Is 1, which is a 4/4 first strike trample lifelinker. Yeah, that's a 4/4 with a whole bunch of abilities for effectively 2 mana, and you are going to gain 3 life in a turn. Next up, just in case of emergencies, and because I ran out of good lifelinkers and first strikers, we've got the, flying at least, Selfless Spirit. This is a 2/1 for 2 in the air, so it can dish out some damage, and it has the ability where if it sacrifices itself, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So there's your saving from board wipe, plus there's a whole bunch of wacky stuff you can do with this card as far as blocking assignments. It's an emergency save, it's a swing deterrent, it's perfect. Next up, all that life gain isn't going to waste because for another mere 2 mana, you get a 2/2 where whenever you gain life, you may pay 1 white. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on any target creature. Put it on a lifelinker and you're going to gain even more life every turn, or put it on a first striker and nobody can swing against you. Or you can put it on herself and suddenly they don't know who to use their kill spell on. Unfortunately, one of the more expensive cards is Thalia, Heretic, Cathar. She's not too bad, though, compared to what she used to be. She's a 3/2 first striker for 3, and creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Normally, I would put in the 1-cost enchantment Authority of the Consuls, but 3 damage is 3 damage, and 3 damage first strike is pretty insane. She doesn't have lifelink though, so if you absolutely had to, you really could replace her with Authority of the Consuls, although flipping your little Eldrazi friend probably won't work because, they can really only summon stuff on their turn except for Flash. It's a good delay card, but you really need to step on the gas combat-wise, so if you had to pull Thalia, definitely put in a more powerful creature or an approximately as powerful creature. So that's it for creatures, and I will say that is the most crazy line of classic white trail mix that you don't want to swing against. To make matters worse, there is the card that single-handedly won me the pre-release. Well, it was in my deck with Gisela, so, maybe that's not quite true, but it did win me the final match. This does cost 4, which is a little hard to get to in this deck because it has absolutely no land dump at all. But you enchant a creature you control, and the creature not only gets +2/+2, but this works kind of as like a suspension field Stasis Snare kind of thing. So when Faith Unbroken enters the battlefield as an aura on one of your own target creatures, you exile another target creature that an opponent controls. until Faith Unbroken leaves the battlefield, so they basically have to kill the creature. So now you've got another kill spell paradox. You could either put this on Gisela and start swinging for, 6 lifelink for a strike in the air, but then she is an absolute lightning rod for removal. If you put this on some dumpy small little creature, like, just Serene Steward or something, well, now who do they kill? She's a 4/4 and she's pretty important, and she got rid of one of their creatures, which will return to the battlefield if they kill her. But then again, you've also got Aerial Responder and Gisela on the battlefield. So, which one do they really kill? Who cares? You're just going to sacrifice Selfless Spirit and save them anyway. That is one of the most powerful cards in the deck, by far. I absolutely love it. Next up, we've got, of course, Stasis Snare. This just seemed like the best, most flexible exiling spell. I think there's another one that also costs 3, but it doesn't have flash, and it gets rid of a creature or like an enchantment or something, so, you could put it in, but I just think this is the best one out right now. Plus, I think there was an alternate art promo of this. So you flash it in, yeah, it's double white, who cares, it's mono white, and basically just exile target creature unless they can manage to blow up your Stasis Snare enchantment. The whole point of removal is get rid of a creature that is just too much for your creatures to handle. I mean, if you have all lifelink but no first strike, you just need to get rid of something with massive toughness because you just can't have it swinging against you. Basically, whatever's getting in the way of combat, get rid of it. Then you can keep on marching forward relentlessly until your enemy is dead. Now there's one more card slot, and of course I put in Always Watching. The problem with decks like this is that you have to swing every single turn to win the game. There is no passive damage or anything like that. Well, you better not get counter-swung for any more damage, so if you're trying to hold off like a 10-10 or something, it's a little bit harder, or just a giant line of tokens. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody had Vigilance? Well, there you go, Always Watching. I mean, I'm sure you saw that coming. Non-token creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. So all of your lifelinkers are bigger, all of your first strikers are bigger, which is equally important, and they all have Vigilance, so they can swing and then also block. So if you have lined up 9 damage worth of first strike, but you can also swing every single turn, oh my gosh. Any game where Always Watching doesn't come out, you do tend to win anyway, though. It's not absolutely crucial. Then again, I would absolutely not pull it from the deck. It is crazy important. As far as lands go, it's pretty much just, I believe, 15 planes. You might want to double check that with the actual deck list in the description. But for special lands, we've got Blighted Steppe. This one is not very necessary. I only put 3 in. It taps for colorless, which, is not a huge deal, but it does come in untapped, so that's nice. But if you pay 4, with only 1 actually being white, you can sacrifice Blighted Steppe, and then you gain 2 life for each creature you control. Seems completely unnecessary and redundant, but can you ever really gain too much life? I mean, this can buy you enough time, like if they just put a board wipe onto the stack. In reaction, boom, Blighted Steppe, gain like 12 life, and there you go, you've got time to come back from it. The only other special land is Sandstone Bridge, which enters the battlefield tapped, unfortunately, I really do hate that, but it's a spell land, it enters the battlefield, and target creature gains +1/+1 in Vigilance until end of turn. To balance it out, I really did need one more source of Vigilance, just in case Always Watching doesn't come out, and even if it does, +1/+1 until end of turn, while also, gaining 1 mana the next turn. Very, very, very useful. Sometimes on turn 4 or 5, you can drop a Sandstone Bridge, and you can just boost a creature just big enough to, get through. They can't block it safely, it has first strike, whatever, and then you also leave it on defense. That is pretty rough. This deck would run almost precisely as well with 22 straight planes, though. Now, if you did want to pull something, I would throw in Angel of Invention. In fact, this almost made it in the place of Always Watching, but it drove the average mana cost to like 3.5 or something. It was absolutely absurd. But Angel of Invention would typically, because of Always Watching, not generate the servo artifacts. It would just become a 4/3 because of the Fabricate 2. So a 4/3 flyer for 5 with flying Vigilance and lifelink, no first strike. I mean, it's no Gisela, but it does have lifelink and it is in the air. The biggest, most important effect, though, is that other creatures you control get +1/+1. That is huge. It boosts all the first strikers, boosts all the lifelinkers. It's also non-legendary, but honestly I wouldn't put more than like 2 or 3 in. If you went for 4, it might be a little much if they were kind of weighing down your opening hand. Now, I will say, Gisela's like 14 apiece and I put 4 in here, so that alone is more than I even like to spend on some decks. If you were to pull her, you could just put in like a 2-cost or a 3-cost, just basic white creature. Just pretty much anything. Just look at the list of white creatures sorted by mana cost, and just find something that kind of fits. Something with First Strike, Lifelink, or some other beneficial ability. That would actually make the deck a little bit faster and a little bit more reliable in case you get mana screwed, so it's not as much of a downgrade as you might think. Pulling the strongest card from the deck, though, seems like a bad idea in general, so the deck really does tend to work as is. Now, if I was an outside observer at this point, I would say, hey, this deck is incredibly stupid, it's way too simplistic, it kind of has synergy, but it doesn't even have a combo. Well, first of all, I mean, life gain, the flipper, and Serene, but other than that, I kind of get what people are saying. People just look at this and they're like, you just took a bunch of really, really good stuff, threw it in a deck, and that's it. That's way too simple. How could that possibly work? What does this deck even do? It wins. That's what it does. This deck crushed every single deck that I put it up against, and we're talking everything I've built in the last 2 years. It had trouble with a couple of the really out there, wacky, freaky, powerful decks, and, token flood, obviously. But that's why in the sideboard, we've got board wipes. There are only truly 2 board wipes, pure board wipes. We got Fumigate, which is quite nice because, life gain. And then, of course, we've got Planar Outburst. Classic. You are never going to get that Awaken off, but, what can you do? Now, if you're thinking Cataclysmic Gearhulk, since it's 5 and kind of a board wipe, that could really backfire. You'd kind of come out on the bad end of that, probably 1 artifact itself and 1 creature. That's about it. Maybe Always Watching as an enchantment. They might just leave some kind of 10-10 that you can't deal with on the board, and then you kind of unimproved the board state. So that's basically just emergency measures to blow up the whole board in case they just flooded it with servo tokens or just summoned a boatload of creatures, maybe if they're playing allies, just something completely out of control. The other half of the sideboard should be pretty obvious too. Well, this is almost exclusively creatures in the deck, and you need to keep them on the field to win. So first of all, we've got a Oath of the Gatewatch Classic, Make a Stand. For 3 as an instant, creatures you control gain +1 and indestructible until end of turn. I could have sworn that there was actually an improved version of it in a new set, but I couldn't find it. The second spell is more of an emergency save, but it definitely works, especially in conjunction with Selfless. I'm of course talking about the classic Eerie Interlude. Very, very, very underappreciated card, by the way. For 3 as an instant, you can exile any number of target creatures you control, return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Theoretically, this could save all of your creatures from something, some kind of giant ambush in combat, or just whatever. I know what you're thinking, save it from your own board wipe. That would be pretty hard to do. You would have to sideboard in about 12 cards. Obviously, this is what I refer to as a concept sideboard, where you have one concept, then another concept, and it's 8 and 7, which kind of gives a reasonable chance of actually being pulled in the game. So what would you pull to put these in? Obviously the 8 removal spells, because they're not working. If someone's flooding the board with tokens, 1 single removal isn't going to do it, so you pull it, put in a board wipe. If your creatures are getting destroyed left and right, it's definitely not by other creatures, because these creatures are tough as hell in combat, so that just means you need to save them. So there you go, Make a Stand in Eerie Interlude. So that's my simple yet insanely effective deck. Hopefully I'll be able to upload some footage of it working in the near future. Until then, feel free to build it and absolutely dominate with it. I'll see you guys next video.